Hello, y'all. February 13th, and here I'm with another story. It's about someone that's called the Green Widow. What's the Green Widow? We'll find out soon. So, we're going to be talking about the murder case of a woman who murdered her husband. Her name is Mary Ellen Samuels. Mary was born in 1947. Mary grew up an all-American girl in sunny Southern California. As a teenager, she spent her free time at drive-in movies, Disneyland, and she loved Disneyland and chasing boys at the local dance parties. Mary's friend Barbara said that Mary was very pretty, and when they would go out and meet guys, Mary Ellen was always their focus. One of the boys who had a crush on Mary, his name was Bob Samuels. He was 2 years younger than Mary, and he was too shy to ask her out as a teen. So Bob watched from far as Mary Ellen moved on in her life, got married, and had a daughter. So who was Bob Samuels? He was born in 1948 from North Carolina. He loved photography. He was a hard worker. He finally landed his dream job working behind the scenes on well-known films such as, like in Hollywood, such as an assistant cameraman. He was an assistant cameraman. And the hours were long, but Bob loved his work. He helped create the films called The Color Purple, and it's like well-known films like that people know. It's called another movie called Heaven Can Wait, and another movie called Lethal Weapon Number 2. In 1980, Bob and Mary bumped into each other. Bob was smitten with Mary as a teenager, and then again as an adult, he bumped into her and things got off really nicely. Things were going good for them. A great start for the couple. They bought a house in suburban Northridge in the San Fernando Valley. Bob reportedly got along well with Mary's daughter, Nicole, whom he actually adopted. Husband and wife, though they were quite different from each other. Bob was down to earth and he was very hardworking, but Mary Ellen liked fast cars, sexy clothes, and excitement. The couple fought over money constantly. Bob eventually bought a Subway sandwich franchise and made Mary manager. They needed extra cash, and it would bring in extra cash. And Bob hoped that making Mary the manager would give her like a sense of purpose. So he was actually a good guy, you know? Bob also paid for his adopted daughter. He paid for her schooling. Like, he paid for everything for them. So, in October 1986, Bob came home to find a note from Mary on the kitchen counter saying she was leaving him. The Dear John letter said something like, "Our marriage has gotten stale. Things just didn't work out for us. I hope we can be friends, but I can't live without you." Mary Ellen filed her divorce, but Bob hoped they'd reconcile. They agreed on a trial separation, with Bob paying $1,500 a month to cover Mary's living expenses. Mary still had the sandwich shop, and she and her daughter moved into a condo which Bob had bought them. So the mother and daughter, they started living this high life, going to clubs, with Bob, of course, paying all the bills. Mary loved going bar hopping. She dressed up in her Sunday's best, And on the afternoon of December 9th, 1988, the LAPD received a call from Bob Samuel's Northridge address. So Mary opened the door and met the police at the front door. Inside the house, her estranged husband lay dead from a shotgun blast to his head. She said she and Nicole had stopped by to drop off their dog for the weekend. So basically, Nicole is her daughter. So she said that her daughter had came to drop off the dog for the weekend, and But when they got there, they discovered the body. It appeared that Bob had been dead for a couple of days. He also had what appeared blunt force trauma to his head that was contributed to his death. It was a contributor to his death. Nicola and Mary had left messages about dropping off the dog on his answering machine to make their story more believable. So, they try to make it look as if robbery gone bad or whatever by setting this all up. While the house appeared to have been ransacked, police say the crime scene was not consistent with a break-in. It looked to them like an inside job. When police questioned Mary down at the station, she wore a low-cut dress and flirted with the officers. So this is what kind of lady she was. At one point, she put her hand on one of the detectives' bald head and talked about how she loved bald guys. Within days of Bob's death, Mary, Ellen, and Nicole moved back into Bob's house in Northridge, put the sandwich shop up for sale, which sold for $70,000, and filed a claim to collect the money from his life insurance policy. So Bob's friends told police that Bob was planning to finalize the divorce with Mary since he realized that she had no intention of getting back together with him, so she decided to finalize the divorce. And he met with a lawyer and wanted to cut her off financially, since at the time of Bob's death, they were still married. So since they were still married at the time of his death, Mary inherited $500,000 in insurance policy and other assets. Mary spent all the money with a vengeance straight away. She bought herself and her daughter fur coats and sexy lingerie and high-end leatherware. She got a new boyfriend named Dean Groover, and she bought him a $50,000 white Porsche, which is like a really fancy car. At the time, they planned to move to Cancun, Mexico, and they wanted to buy a condominium there for $180,000. Despite the growing suspicions, police had little to connect Mary to the murder. Then, in May of 1989, that's actually the year I'm born, the police received an anonymous tip telling them to talk to Nicole's boyfriend. So Nicole is Mary's daughter. She had this boyfriend, and he was 27-year-old named Jim Bernstein. Jim Bernstein was actually Nicole's fiance at the time, but unbeknownst to him, Nicole was actually engaged to another man at the same time. That's what kind of people they were. Like, they had no integrity, no honor, no nothing. That's what kind of people they were. That's what we're dealing with. So police interviewed friends who knew Mary from the bars, and they disclosed that Mary tried to hire random people for the hit on her husband. She didn't care that people heard. Mary and Jim Bernstein were called in for questioning that same night. Mary was stone-faced and denied everything, but Bernstein was rattled. And police put both of them together in a room, and in the same room, and Bernstein told Mary, "He's gonna arrest us right now. He says he knows 100% that you and I did this." Mary and Jim Bernstein didn't crack, though, that night, and police were forced to set them free. So 4 weeks later, a couple discovered the badly decomposed body of Jim Bernstein. According to his boss at the time, Jim was planning to tell police about his role in Bob's murder. So they identified Jim Bernstein, who had been killed on the side of the road, through his fingerprints. And he was so badly decomposed. And so his boss said that he was planning to tell the police of the murders because his guilt was eating him up inside, and he was very remorseful, and he was afraid. He was very frightened at the time to get caught anyway, so he wanted to turn himself in. But apparently Mary had different ideas. So Mary was introduced by a friend who was a co-conspirator in Bob's murder. this co-conspirator introduced her to a man named Paul Gall. Mary told Gall that Jim Bernstein was selling drugs to children. So she made him into like a really bad person. So Mary told Gall she'd pay him $5,000 for the hit on Bernstein. So Gall enlisted Darrell Ray, another friend of his, Darrell Ray Edwards, and Edwards agreed to kill Bernstein for $5,000. Gall later testified that his own brother was killed by drug dealers, and that made him angry, and that's why he agreed to have the hit set up on Bernstein. So Gall and Darrell manipulated Jim Bernstein into their car, drove him to a desolate area, and both men strangled Bernstein to death. In the struggle, Bernstein asked, "Why are you doing this? Why?" And Gall said, "Because you talk too much." Apparently, Mary was afraid that he would turn himself in and, make her also get arrested by the police and put in jail for what she'd done. So she had him killed. So now she's killed 2 men. So how did police find out who killed Bernstein? So a check written around the time Bernstein disappeared, actually by Mary, she wrote a check of $1,500 to these men. It led the police to both men, Paul Gall and the other guy, Darrell. So when in custody, both men told police everything. And when police went to arrest Mary in her home, they discovered a photo that they felt showed motive, taken by Mary's boyfriend, Dean Groover, in Cancun. It showed Mary Ellen totally naked, nude, only her private parts covered in $20,000 cash, and she was grinning from ear to ear. This nude photo was later exhibited at the trial. As the prosecutor said, "A picture is worth 10,000 words." In April of 1994, Mary Ellen's trial for the double murders of Bob Samuels and Jim Bernstein got underway. Paul Gall and Darrell Ray Edwards both testified against Mary, and the prosecution portrayed her as a cold, calculated, and money-hungry, nasty woman. Nicole, Mary's daughter, testified on her mother's behalf against the lawyer's advice. The lawyers told her not to, but she didn't care. And she said Bob sexually abused her, which Bob's family denied it as completely false. So, they're trying to smear him in death, and he can't defend himself. Nicole tried to smear him as if that would be, a good enough excuse to kill someone, So the jury didn't believe her story, and on July 1st, 1994, the jury found Mary Ellen Samuels guilty on both counts of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to death. Paul Gall and Darrell Ray each pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and received sentences of 15 years to life. Mary is one of 20 women on death row in California. She's now 74. 71. Been in prison for 24 years, and Nicole has never been indicted for any murders. Even though technically, she was probably involved, but she wasn't indicted. And a little more details about Mary Ellen, how crazy she was that on the day that her husband Bob was murdered, she had reconciled with her ex-husband, who had actually owned many guns. And the prosecutors actually believe that he might have been involved in the murder in some way by, giving guns, helping with the murders by giving them the ammunition and the weapons to be part of the conspiracy to get him, But that's the story of the Green. Thus ends the story of the Green Widow. You know why, women who kill their husbands are called Black Widows? Because the Black Widow, when they mate, it's a spider. When the female spider, the Black Widow, she mates with her with the male widow, Black Widow. He with the spider, she mates with him, gets pregnant, and then devours her mate alive. And so that's why they're called Black Widows. But they called this lady the Green Widow because all she wanted was money, and she had her husband killed for money, you know? Very greedy woman. So that's the story of Mary Ellen Samuels. It took me some time to compile all this stuff, all the story. I hope it was clear enough. There was a lot of twists and turns but in the story, but I didn't have the energy to compile it all. And so I hope you enjoyed, and have a good day.